One of the biggest examples of an artist letting the music industry run them was Elvis. Elvis was music's first global superstar, and with that came some uncharted waters. Before Elvis showed up, artists were largely regionally dominant, with the rare few that were big enough names to be nationally dominant. Elvis came along, and the global appeal that followed him across numerous countries came along as well. The rise of mass media in the 50s mixed with his global appeal allowed him to become the first global superstar in music. Elvis was only in the limelight for 2 decades, but his impact has long superseded his relatively short stay. 2026 marks 49 years since Elvis has been gone. 49 years since one of music's most important figures was gone, largely thanks to the very industry that made him a superstar. A myriad of things are responsible for the early passing of one of music's top performers, but one of the key reasonings was the industry itself. The music industry is, was, and likely always will be a demanding industry that requires sacrifice and dedication if you aim to make it. The greats of music aim for routine success across multiple years' worth of work, sometimes decades, and Elvis was no exception. The career of Elvis can be told in 2 parts, the rise and the comeback. Elvis changed the game when he came onto the scene in the mid-1950s, bringing a whole new style and flair to music that was so new at that moment in time. Not everyone liked it, many were against it, but Elvis was still making huge waves in the industry itself. Elvis was only able to enjoy mainstream success for a few years before going to serve in the Cold War in 1958. Upon his return from war, the image of Elvis was changing to widely appeal to more of a mainstream audience. Gone were the days of young teenage heartthrob and shaking hips, now it's about being more mature and taking on more movie roles as well. If him taking on the duty of serving to soften the hearts of elder statesmen nationally didn't work, surely him stopping with his music certainly would. This era of Elvis that was around for 90% of the 1960s decade is not looked back on fondly. The music scene was evolving in the 60s, and Elvis was left to cast in mediocre Hollywood movies that stifled his love and creativity for what made him known in the first place: music. The infamous comeback special for Elvis in 1968 changed everything, where people finally felt like the real Elvis was back. Throughout the 1970s, Elvis maintained a Vegas residency, which on the surface sounded really good. Elvis was back into his domain of performing in front of people, as they would now relive what brought him to the dance almost 2 decades previous. However, it came with a cost, as the dependencies for his Vegas shows became more and more overwhelming. To go with dependencies on performance, Elvis, much like a lot of musicians, developed the dependencies for prescription drugs. To go with these issues, Elvis faced a myriad of health problems throughout the 1970s, including an enlarged heart as well as chronic constipation. Surely anybody could say, why couldn't he just stop? But he couldn't, as his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, oftentimes exploited Elvis for his own financial gain. Colonel Tom had very shady reasonings for continuing to exploit Elvis, as his own citizenship was oftentimes in question, which he used to forbid Elvis from touring across the world. Elvis was still a big commercial success during this time, but physically and mentally he was not well. His health issues being compounded by the divorce that he had with Priscilla Presley in late 1973 that didn't help matters either. From 1975 until his death in 1977, Elvis's health was at its worst, which should not be the case for anybody in their early 40s. Severe insomnia, hypertension, bad bowel issues, and more plagued Elvis for the last few years of his life, and it was obvious to anyone who watched. Elvis unfortunately passed away on August 16, 1977 at his home in Graceland. He was 42 years old. A slew of health issues contributed to the passing of one of music's most important, but all these issues could have been avoided if he was given more time to himself and less time on stage. Elvis was a performer through and through, but he is one of many examples of somebody who, if given a break or had more leeway to discuss certain things, could have had much more years under his belt.